Okay, we got another word in context problem. Scholarly discussions of gender in Shakespeare's comedies often celebrate the rebellion of the playwright's characters against the rigid expectations blank by Elizabethan society. So the comedies celebrate rebellion of the rigid expectations imposed by Elizabethan society. Most of the comedies end in marriage, with characters returning to their socially dictated gender roles after previously defying them. But there are some notable exceptions, right? So the rigid expectations of society are that you can defy your socially dictated role in your gender, but eventually you give into it. So imposed by Elizabethan society. Let's check the answers. Interjected, so that means to jump in the middle of. That's not right? The expectations don't actually jump in the middle by Elizabethan society. Committed, rigid expectations committed by Elizabethan? No, the society doesn't commit, actually. Illustrated, possibly, against the rigid expectations. Highlighted, that would be kind of synonymous with illustrated. Highlighted by Elizabethan society? Definite possibility. D, prescribed. Imposed would be most close to prescribed, right? Elizabethan society, it prescribes expectations. It doesn't necessarily illustrate or be an example of expectations. So between the two, illustrated's not the answer. Prescribed would be the better answer. I could see a lot of students choosing C, but Elizabethan society, I'm having trouble saying that word for some reason, prescribes expectations. And that's what people end up ultimately following. Okay, another word in context. For her 2021 art installation anthem, Wu Sang joined forces with singer and composer Beverly Glenn Copeland to produce a piece that critics found truly, they praised it, so who knows, remarkable? Could be innovative, exciting, novel, who knows what, but let's start with that. Sang for creatively transforming a museum rotunda into a dynamic exhibit by projecting filmed images of Glenn Copeland onto a massive 84-foot curtain and filling the space with sounds of his and other voices singing. So found truly, well, you could be creative. So remarkable, creative is remarkable, but it's probably even more so the idea of novel, right? It's unique, it's new, it's exciting. He's doing something different, which is the essence of creativity. I think this is going to be more the type of word we want, something like novel as opposed to remarkable. Let's see. Restrained. Well, it's definitely not restrained. That's to hold back. This is pretty wild setup. It's not holding anything back. Inventive. Yeah, inventive is like novel. That's creative. Inventive, creative are the same. I think this is going to be it. Let's check the others. Inexplicable. That means you can't explain it. Well, that's not the idea at all. Mystifying is, curious, undefined, somehow a mystery. No, inventive. That's creative. Inventive is creative. That's the right idea. Okay, another word in context. While most animals are incapable of passing somatic mutations, okay, again, not sure exactly what that is, but they're going to tell us in the long dash, which gives us extra information describing that. Somatic mutations are genetic alterations that arise in an organism's non-reproductive cells. Okay? So most animals cannot pass somatic mutations. So unless it's somehow in your reproductive cells, you don't pass it along when you reproduce. Okay, that makes sense. On to their offspring. Elkhorn coral presents an intriguing, well, I can kind of already tell is going to be an intriguing counterexample the way they're setting this up, right? My guess is this is going to be an example where they do pass on non sort of genetic reproductive information. Let's see. We have got our typical colon, which should describe the word we're actually looking for. In a 2022 study, researchers found that elk and coral produced offspring that inherited somatic mutations from a parent. Yes, that's correct, right? So, intriguing counterexample. Presents an intriguing hypothesis. No, an hypothesis is an idea that needs to be tested. That's not quite the right idea. Affinity is how close you are to something. That's not the right idea. An anomaly is kind of like a counterexample. It's something that doesn't belong there. It's an exception. It's an anomaly. And yes, this example is an exception. It's an anomaly. That's going to be our answer. A corroboration. Corroboration means you just confirm something. That's not the right idea, right? So again, you might not know a couple words here like affinity, but you should still hopefully know enough about anomaly you get to the right answer. C is correct. Okay, another word in context. Researcher Young led a 2020 study showing that individual acts of kindness can blank pro-social behavior across a larger group. So can maybe kindle. So if one person's nice, it kind of kindles or sparks pro-social behavior among others in the group. That would be my guess, right? We don't have evidence for it yet, but that's just a hunch, a first hunch. Young and her team found that bystanders who witness a helpful act become more likely to offer help to someone else, and in so doing can inspire still others. So it's like this chain reaction of pro-social behavior from one kind act. So yeah, I think I want kindle or sparks, right? Require. Acts of kindness can require social behavior. No, that's not the idea. Remember. No, it's not about recalling or remembering. It's about instigating or sparking pro-social behavior. Foster. Foster is to encourage. Yes, that's the idea. These acts of kindness encourage or foster pro-social behavior. They don't discourage it. That's the opposite. C is the correct answer. Okay, word in context. Some foraging models predict that the distance bees travel when foraging will decline as floral density increases. So foraging means they're out searching for food. Okay. Kind of hard to process this if you don't know that. So foraging will decline as floral density increases. So as there's less flowers, they search less. That makes sense. But here's our contrast. So-and-so showed that bees' behavior is inconsistent with this prediction. So there's the prediction, the model that predicts this, but there's the evidence that doesn't show that apparently. If flowers in dense patches are blank, so bees will forage beyond patches of low species richness to acquire multiple resource types. So they will forage beyond patches of low species richness to acquire multiple resource types. So they'll actually look beyond low floral density, right? So if the flowers in dense patches are different, so patches of low species richness to acquire multiple resource types. So the dense patches are varied, right? Something like that, varied. So which choice? If the flowers in dense patches are depleted, so bees' behavior is inconsistent with this prediction. If flowers in dense patches are depleted, bees will forage beyond patches of low species richness to acquire multiple resources. So if the flowers in the dense patches are depleted, how can a flower be depleted if they're in a dense patch? I don't think that's right. I think that's wrong. Homogeneous. If the flowers in a dense patch are homogeneous, bees will forage beyond the patches of low species richness. Well, what does that mean, low species? There are few different species? That kind of is consistent with the idea of the part after the colon. So that might be it. Not my guess, but that might be it. Immature. If the flowers in dense patches are immature, bees will forage beyond patches of low species. So the low species richness has to do with what our flower patches are. So that's not immature, definitely. Dispersed. So if this prediction of flowers in dense patches are dispersed, that doesn't make any sense. How can it be in a dense patch and dispersed, which means spread apart at the same time? I actually think the right answer here is going to be homogeneous. Different from my guess, but this is a little unusual one. So the bee's behavior is inconsistent. It says they won't forage if there's decline in floral density. But in dense patches that are homogeneous, that is all the same, bees will forage beyond those patches of low species richness, which means homogeneous again, kind of, to acquire multiple resources, that is heterogeneous sources of food. I think that's the right answer, B for 20.